Communicating clearly and effectively is important all the time, but probably no more so than during some type of crisis. Meghan Rothschild, president of Chick Media, is here with some advice about crisis communication. Good morning, Meghan. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So many crises over the last few years: the pandemic, Ukraine, you name it, the interest rates, gas prices.
We're living in a world.
It's a weird world.
Crises.
Let's start with the very simple. What is a crisis as it's defined?
Yeah, so I like to define it as anything that may have a negative impact on your business, your reputation, or your revenue. So this can be anything from a natural disaster that ends up having your business closed for a few weeks, to someone leaving a really negative review about you online, to maybe some internal misconduct. It can be a variety of anything. The definition of crisis really is very broad.
So when a crisis hits your business, your personal life, what's the first thing you should have?
You need to have a plan.
Okay.
So I always like to say it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, which businesses don't always love to hear. But the reality is, the world that we're living in with digital communications being so quick, you're going to face some form of crisis eventually. And so if you can take some time to put together a solid plan, and not only that, but practice it on an annual basis, run mock crisis drills, that is going to set you apart from other businesses who might be experiencing similar things.
Should you try and tackle all of this on your own, or should you incorporate others in your group?
Oh, you definitely need to incorporate others. So one of the first steps that we like to talk about is compiling and putting together your team. So in the event of a crisis, who's going to be sitting at the table? Who's going to be making decisions? Who needs to be there? And it's often people like your head of finance, your head of communications and PR, your executive director or president, your head of security and maintenance, depending on how large your organization is. Obviously, it's going to be a much smaller scale for our mom and pop local businesses.
Right. Now, there's a fine line in time to react, or time to act, I should say.
Yes.
Now, what's the difference between acting and reacting?
Yeah, so again, we live in this world where communication is immediate, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have days or minutes even to really think about these things. So you do want to act. You want to get out there ahead of it. You want to be very much talking to people about what's going on, but you don't want to be reactive, right? So when we get accused of something, especially if it's like I was saying, the internal misconduct, or maybe your business did something wrong or unethical, or there was a terrible mistake that happened, it's so easy for us to react and to be very defensive about what's happening, and we don't want to do that, because that's gonna cause the storm to worsen. So we want to act calmly.
You talk about the storm worsening. Sometimes what we all see is some of these businesses or government officials or whomever it might be that are facing and trying to communicate during a crisis don't put all the cards on the table.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's important, so that you're trying to communicate. So you want to, the people want to know what's going on.
You have to be transparent. And I always say to people, you might have actually done something wrong, right? It might be your business's fault. And instead of denying it and saying, oh no, that wasn't our fault, that's not our problem, you do have to be transparent. And you do have to, in some cases, maybe it's not an apology, but express remorse about the situation and take a little bit of ownership over what occurred.
Now, what are your thoughts on getting that message out there? I mean, is it send a letter to people? Is it use all possible forms of media to get that message out?
I'm a huge fan of using all of your digital communication tools. So again, we live in this world where social media is readily available, and that's unfortunately where people are going to go to have negative conversations about your company.
Right.
You have to be responding to that. So I always say, depending on the level of the crisis, obviously if it's something huge that warrants a lot of attention, you want to have a landing page on your website. Maybe it's even living on the homepage, and then you're issuing statements out on your social media channels and driving people back to that website for more information.
So sort of address the issue, maybe have a frequently asked questions to sort of curb some of the negative comments.
And keep that communication going, keep the conversation going.
Fantastic. Meghan Rothschild, always fun having you. Great advice. Good
Thanks
to see you.
Thanks for having me.